Somewhere in a government office in Switzerland, there's a piece of paper that officially classifies FIFA as a non-profit organization. Not a loophole nobody noticed, not a joke. A real legal tax status, the same category as your local food bank. Except this particular non-profit is on track to bring in $13 billion over 4 years, roughly what the NBA generates in a single season. And the NBA has to pay for actual teams, arenas, coaches, and player salaries to earn that money. FIFA doesn't own a single stadium, employ a single player, or manufacture a single product. So how does an organization that legally isn't supposed to turn a profit end up sitting on that kind of cash? Stick with me, because once you understand this trick, you will never watch a World Cup opening ceremony the same way again. Let's rewind to 6 a.m. on May 27, 2015. The location, the Boer au Lac Hotel in Zurich, Switzerland, one of the most expensive hotels in Europe, the kind of place with marble floors and doormen in white gloves. Swiss police move quietly through the lobby and head straight for the guest floors. They're not there for tourists. They're there for the leadership of FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. Within the hour, 7 top officials are arrested, some literally wrapped in bed sheets to hide their faces from the cameras waiting outside, and quietly walked out through a back entrance. The U.S. Department of Justice later lays out the charges: decades of bribery, kickbacks, and money laundering worth more than $150 million. And the organization at the center of all of it? Officially, still just a non-profit. So let's actually break down what that word is hiding. FIFA was founded in 1904 and has been headquartered in Zurich for most of its history, and that location isn't an accident. Switzerland's association laws let organizations register as non-profits, with very light oversight and very generous tax treatment. Under this setup, FIFA has no shareholders. Nobody owns stock in FIFA. Nobody collects a dividend check. Instead, FIFA is technically owned by its 211 member football associations, more countries than are even in the United Nations. Each one gets a vote. On the surface, that sounds almost democratic, but keep that detail in your back pocket because it's about to become very important. Now let's follow the money coming in, because this is where it gets wild. FIFA doesn't sell a physical product, it sells rights. The right to broadcast, the right to sponsor, the right to slap a logo on the biggest stage in sports. For the current 4-year cycle, ending with the 2026 World Cup across the US, Mexico, and Canada, FIFA is projected to pull in a record $13 billion. That's up 72% from the previous cycle. Television rights alone bring in around $5.3 billion, roughly 40% of everything FIFA makes. Then come the sponsors, names you already know, plastered across every stadium: Adidas, Coca-Cola, Visa, Hyundai. Add ticket sales, hospitality boxes, and merchandise licensing, and you get a business model that looks less like a sports federation and more like a media empire that happens to throw one giant party every 4 years. Here's the part that makes FIFA's finances look completely broken if you don't already know the trick. FIFA actually posted net losses in 2023, 2024, and 2025, 3 straight years in the red, adding up to a $1.25 billion loss. If this were a normal company, that would set off alarm bells. But here's the thing, FIFA doesn't actually think in single years at all. It builds every budget, every target, every plan around one 4-year cycle at a time, because its entire business is built around one event that happens once every 4 years. Judging FIFA by a single year's numbers is like judging a farmer's income by what he earns in the 3 months before harvest. Of course it looks like a loss, the harvest hasn't come in yet. Almost all of FIFA's revenue gets counted in the World Cup year itself, while the massive costs of preparing for the tournament are spread across the years before it. In plain terms, FIFA spends 3 years bleeding money on purpose, because it already knows year 4 is going to more than cover it. By late 2025, FIFA had already locked in 93% of its revenue for this entire cycle, and had already pre-sold 43% of broadcasting rights for the cycle after that. This isn't a struggling non-profit. This might be one of the most predictable money machines in the history of business, built entirely around the scarcity of one single month once every 4 years. So where does all that money actually go, since there are no shareholders to hand it to? This is where the non-profit label stops being a technicality and starts being genuinely clever. FIFA plans to reinvest at least $11.67 billion this cycle, a 20% jump from before. The single biggest expense, about $7.6 billion, goes toward actually staging the tournaments, the World Cup itself, prize money, operations. But the second biggest chunk is the one you really need to pay attention to. Around $3.9 billion goes toward development, with $2.7 billion of that flowing directly to FIFA's 211 member associations and 6 regional confederations. Picture small national federations that can barely afford a decent training pitch suddenly receiving guaranteed multi-million-dollar grants from Zurich. On the surface, it looks like generosity. Look one layer deeper and it looks like something else entirely. Remember those 211 member associations and their votes? They're the same organizations receiving these development checks, so FIFA controls both the money that keeps small federations financially alive and the votes that decide who runs FIFA. Once you see that connection, development funding and political leverage start looking like two names for the exact same thing. And this is exactly the mechanism that blew up into that 2015 scandal. For years leading up to the Zurich raid, investigators found that officials, including longtime power broker Jack Warner of Trinidad and Tobago and American executive Chuck Blazer, had allegedly disguised bribes as development grants and marketing deals in exchange for votes on World Cup hosting rights and FIFA leadership elections. Sepp Blatter, FIFA's president for 17 years, resigned just months after the raid. He was never criminally convicted, but the system underneath him had become so tangled with corruption that stepping down was the only option left. Gianni Infantino took over promising reform, and financially, FIFA has never looked stronger under his leadership. Reserves hit a record $3.97 billion by the end of the last cycle. But the same paradox that existed under Blatter hasn't disappeared, it's just wearing a cleaner suit. According to FIFA's own 2025 financial report, Infantino's annual bonus jumped from $2 million to $3 million following the successful launch of the newly expanded Club World Cup. A nonprofit, by definition, has no owners to hand profits to, but it can still hand out very generous bonuses to the people steering the ship, and with no shareholders in the room asking questions, nobody's really stopping it. So here's the real takeaway. The non-profit label isn't a lie. Legally, everything checks out. No shareholders, no dividends, a mandate to put the money back into football. But non-profit was never a promise that nobody benefits. It just means one specific group doesn't: outside investors. Everyone else in the room still has every reason to keep this $13 billion machine running exactly the way it is. Federations that depend on FIFA's grants to survive, executives collecting record bonuses, and a leadership class whose grip on power depends on keeping 211 votes happy. FIFA didn't accidentally become one of the richest organizations in sports while trying to run a charity. It built one of the most efficient money and power machines on the planet, and then found the one legal label that made it look from the outside like the exact opposite. So next time FIFA calls itself a non-profit while negotiating billion-dollar broadcast deals and tax breaks from host governments, the real question isn't whether that's technically true, it's who that label is actually protecting.